Hello, we're on for chapter 10 now from my book, Lessons from Life. We're still going through the Sermon on the Mount. We're up to chapter 7, where Jesus says, "Seek, you shall find." Asking's simple. Seeking is more costly. It demands time and energy. You can ask for something while sitting down, but to seek something, you have to get up and move. We've already found that we can't just ask for anything and expect to receive it. We are to ask for good gifts. So likewise, the same principle applies to seeking. We must seek good things. Then we can have the confidence that we shall find them. What good things can we seek? Well, we can seek God Himself. If it's good to seek good gifts, it's better still to seek the giver of the gifts. Seek God's favour. There's a vast difference between seeking God's face and seeking His hand. Seek justice. Seek righteousness. Seek God's will. Seek to edify the church. Seek heavenly things. However, it's possible to seek God and not find Him. Where there is disobedience in our life, we will not find God when we seek Him. If we seek God with a wrong motive, He will not answer us. Lack of faith will stop God from answering. There's nothing like adversity to make us seek God. When we're at ease and in blessing, we rarely have the motivation to make the effort of getting down on our knees and spending time seeking God. But in desperate times, in times of crisis and affliction, we seek Him, and He knows that. It's good to look at these things, but permit me with this indulgence. I really must share something very personal, which has been a tremendous blessing to me, and I'm absolutely sure it will bless you as well. Nathan, my eldest child, he dearly loved the Lord, and he used to attend a wonderful Christian school. It was run on godly principles by born-again, spirit-filled believers who had adopted fit for service as their school motto. Well, when Nathan was 6, he was taken along with an entire group of other pupils to a joint service of Christian schools around the northwest region of Manchester, where they all participated in praise and worship and had a message preached to them. At the end of the meeting, Nathan went forward and publicly committed his life to Jesus and promised to read his Bible and pray every day. He was only 6, but he took this commitment very seriously and endeavoured to keep this promise. Some nights, I'd be outside his bedroom unbeknown to him, and I'd hear him talk to God as though he was sitting in the room with him. He'd tell God how much he loved him and wanted to serve him, and he would beg God to guide and direct his life as he only wanted to do his will, whatever that may be. To hear his intimate and exuberant chatter would sometimes bring me close to tears as I remembered the abandoned and innocent relationship I once had with God before all the responsibilities of caring for a family stole my time and energy. In 2001, just a couple of weeks before Nathan's 9th birthday, friends of ours from the Open Doors ministry came to share what had happened to them on a recent trip to a dangerous country where Christianity is forbidden, and they made an appeal for finance to provide Bibles and other necessities for the believers there. At that time, Nathan had been saving for about a year to buy a bike, and he'd collected around £45. But he wanted to help, so he asked if he could contribute some of his own money from his savings. Once we'd said this was okay, he emptied his money box and put the entire contents into his basket. I have to admit, I was a bit alarmed at this, thinking that he'd probably be sorry about it later. But he was adamant they needed the Bibles more than he needed the bike. And he wanted the money to stay where it was. Well, Maurice said a little prayer with him after the meeting and asked God to look after Nathan's needs, thinking that God would probably provide him with a bike from somewhere. But Nathan was just content to give the money to God. Well, on the Monday following this incident, Maurice was due to speak at a house group in Bradford. The man who ran the meeting, knowing that Maurice was interested in musical equipment, showed him a new guitar that he'd just bought. But he then announced that God had spoken to him and he wanted to give his old one to Nathan. Morris expected a well-worn, clapped-out guitar to be given to him, but he was astonished when this guy brought downstairs from his bedroom a black, hard case, which, when opened, was all fur-lined and had compartments for putting plectrums and a duster in. The guitar, nestling in this beautiful case, would be coveted by any serious musician. It looked just like an ovation and was in perfect condition and could be played both acoustically and electrically. It was too much for an 8-year-old, but this man believed that God wanted Nathan to have it. Well, within a matter of 3 months, Nathan was strumming out a good solid rhythm and could play quite a number of chords. He'd even begun to write his own songs. Nathan gave away that money that he'd intended to buy a bike with, but God had seen his heart and he'd given him direction for his future. Nathan knew God wanted him to be involved in music. And in the year after receiving the guitar, he composed some authentic sounding Filipino music, which was used on a video showing the work some missionary friends of ours were doing in the Philippines. Shortly after this event, some other friends of ours, Jason and Amanda Robinson, together with their 2 children, they paid us a visit. Amanda, who could also strum a guitar, asked Nathan to play his beautiful instrument for her husband, who had never yet heard him play. Nathan, always pleased to play before an appreciative audience, was delighted to do this, especially as all my children were very fond of this man, who also happened to be a very famous rugby player and was a tremendous Christian example for them. Well, Nathan started off playing a chorus, which we all sang lustily together. Then he sang a song which he'd written himself. I looked over to the tough, rugged husband and I saw his eyes become very soft and tender. When Nathan had finished, he just smiled at him and told him how much he'd appreciated his performance. Well, the very next morning, Jason called again as his wife and children had stayed overnight with us. I was in the kitchen preparing food when they turned up at the patio door. I heard his voice calling to me from the doorway, asking if it was all right for him to take my 2 sons, Nathan and Isaac, to a sports shop with himself and his son, as he needed to get something. I thought this was a great idea, as it would get these boisterous boys out of the way for a short while. But an hour or so later, my boys came home with faces grinning from ear to ear, both carrying bulky JJB sports plastic bags. They ran excitedly to me to show me what was in the bags, and it contained running shoes, football boots, a tracksuit and t-shirt to match. The kids were delighted. I asked Jason later on privately why he'd done this, and he told me that when he saw Nathan playing his guitar with so much love and dedication to God, it really touched and moved him, and he felt that he just wanted to do something to bless him back. I know Nathan was blessed, especially as he felt what he had done had earned such a blessing that his brother and best friend Isaac was able to share his blessing too. But as the mother, and knowing that Nathan at such a very young age had given his all after seeking God and his will, I felt so blessed. In fact, I felt more blessed than everybody else. God did something wonderful for little Isaac too. He's a lovely personality, and because he's 3 years younger than Nathan, he always feels as though he has to wait his turn for most things. When you're older is a phrase he often hears, or your turn will come, but he doesn't complain. He's very generous. Well, Morris was booked to preach in Belgium during the summer holidays that same year, and friends of ours who live close by to the people who accommodate Morris there asked if Nathan and Isaac could also come and have a holiday with them and their children. My kids were delighted to be going to another country where they speak a different language and were packed a week before they were even due to leave. Well, on the very morning that Morris and the boys were due to catch the ferry, Morris was checking through the documents and the passports. Oh, but he found to his horror that Isaac's passport was a year out of date. We had to break the news to Isaac. This had been a terrible oversight on our part, and it was possible that he may not be able to go after all. I could see Isaac was truly disappointed, but he kept hugging me and telling me that he didn't mind. Maurice did his best to get someone in the authority to allow Isaac's trip, but nobody would give him the okay. The people dealing with Maurice's query suggested that the only thing he could do was take Isaac to the ferry, explain the situation and see what happened, but they couldn't guarantee anything. And it was very likely that he'd be turned away. Oh, I saw little Isaac sitting on the floor with his head down, and I asked him what he was doing. "I'm just thinking," he said. I asked if we should pray together and see if God would make it possible for him to go on the holiday. "You can if you want to, Mum, but I know that sometimes God says no." Oh, the little dear. He didn't want to ask in case he was refused. He didn't feel important enough. Yet he didn't feel bitter or resentful. It was just a fact, and I wanted to cry. Isaac too had given his heart to Jesus recently and tried to follow his older brother, reading his Bible and praying every night. But he always felt as though he was in Nathan's shadow. God had done so many things for Nathan. I so badly wanted God to show Isaac that he too was important. So I prayed with all my heart that God would take care of the situation and let Isaac go. Well, a co-worker followed behind Maurice and the boys in another vehicle on their journey to the ferry, just in case Isaac was not allowed to get on board. But amazingly, he returned home alone. God had worked a miracle. And it was a miracle because Maurice certainly didn't look like Isaac's father, much more like his grandfather. A few hours after they'd left home, I received a phone call from an ecstatic little boy saying that God had answered our prayer and he was on the ferry. The Bible tells us to seek the Lord with all our heart and he'll grant our heart's desires. My children were learning from a young age that they could rely on God. He is totally trustworthy. I also experienced a tremendous blessing. Since having a family, my life has been turned upside down. The things I considered so important before, like quietness and time to seek God, they'd been snatched away by the broken sleep and the daytime demands of young children. I passed through condemnation, defeat, helplessness, so many emotions, but all the time yearned with all my heart for the relationship I once had with God. I knew it was only a matter of time before my youngest child, Tamar, who would be 3 years old at that time, on the 6th of December 2001, would also be going to school, and so I hung on. But a wonderful thing happened. Both my older children already went to a fee-paying Christian school, which meant that Maurice just didn't have enough faith to commit himself to Tamar, to the preschool. But after going to a conference and hearing the message which was preached, faith came into his heart, and he rang me to say she could start straight away if the school would accept her, instead of after Christmas when they had the next intake of pupils. He also made me book a break for myself for 5 days at a Christian centre in Wales. Well, as soon as Tamar went to school, things changed. But going on the retreat was what made all the difference. At last, I was on my own with my Bible. I read, I prayed, I thought, I sewed some items that I'd taken with me to mend as I listened to a cassette by David Wilkerson, which I found on the premises. I was on holiday with my best friend, whom I hadn't been alone with for years, and there seemed to be so much catching up to do. I was transformed, refocused, invigorated. It was wonderful. I can thoroughly recommend it. My husband said he had his old wife back. Paul, the apostle, said that his whole aim was to know Christ. Make opportunity to seek the Lord and his will, and this will truly give you and your family the fulfillment that you're all seeking. God bless.